Hi everyone, I'm Callie Kim. Welcome to my garden. Today I'm going to show you 20 perennials that'll feed you forever. You plant them once and you can grow and harvest them for many, many years. These perennials are not only low maintenance, easy to grow, but will save you time, money, and effort while providing you with healthy, delicious food in many cases all year round. So stick around and discover how to turn your garden into a virtual food forest that you can keep on harvesting from time after time. A perennial is a plant that lives for more than 2 years and typically regrows season after season from the same roots. I'm growing all these perennials here in my Southern California garden. We have frost-free winters, but I am going to be offering tips for gardeners who live in the north with hard freezes, as well as us southern gardeners here. Now we're going to start with the woodier or very, very cold hardy herbs. Here I've got rosemary, sage, and oregano. And all of these herbs prefer full sun, although I do have them growing here in partial shade in my herb garden right next to my house. They can be grown here in raised beds like I am too, but can also be grown in containers if you live on a balcony and just want a little small kitchen herb garden. Now, rosemary is definitely one of my favorites. It's very, very aromatic, and you can see why they're called woody herbs. Has a very, very woody stem, and typically we love to eat this mostly in chicken. You can just harvest it, and then what I do to use the leaves is I run my fingers backwards across the rosemary stalk to take off the rosemary leaves, and then chop it up and marinate it with lemon in my chicken dishes. Now, rosemary and sage and oregano can all be grown from cuttings. So when you're taking a cutting, what you want to do is take the soft part and just snip it off. You can see this one is a nice light green color. The woodier part will also root from a cutting, but it takes much, much longer. And all you have to do, this is so easy to grow these, is just pop it in a little glass of water. I like to put a drop or two of the Vermistera worm tea in it because it has a natural rooting hormone. And then these do take a little bit longer to propagate, maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Then you can pop it in a cup of soil, let it grow and establish, and then put it right out in your garden. So they do grow very easily from transplants or cuttings. However, you can start them from seed, but it's pretty challenging. So typically you'll start them from seed in the spring, but it can take 2 to 3 weeks for them to germinate. And then once they get to 2 or 3 inches tall, you can pop them out in your garden beds. Now, the wonderful thing about sage, rosemary, and oregano is that they are so, so hardy. They can take hard freezes. So if you're in a northern climate, they can take temperatures down to 20 degrees, sometimes even 0 degrees with protection. So in northern climates, what you want to do is cut off kind of the old dead growth here underneath right before the wintertime, and then mulch very heavily at the base. We've got lots of weeds growing in here, so it kind of acts as a living mulch, but mulch heavily at the base to protect the roots over the wintertime. And they should survive the winter and start growing back and leafing and branching out with brand new growth in the spring. Now I've got to show you my sage here. This is absolutely gorgeous. Nice, soft, kind of light green leaves. When it flowers, it has beautiful purple flowers that attract the pollinators, and this is absolutely delicious in chicken dishes and over salmon. Now, one thing I like to do with sage, and I wish you guys could be out here with me to smell these herbs. It just smells absolutely amazing. But one thing I like to do with sage is make a brown butter sauce. So in a frying pan, melt some butter, chop it up, and put the sage in it till it's nice and crispy, and then pour it over chicken and fish. This is so delicious. So herbs are such a great way to punch up the flavor of your food. They're so expensive in the grocery store, but you can plant them once here in your garden, grow them forever, and save yourself a ton of money. Now I want to go over and show you where I have some oregano growing, a lot better than my oregano here, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. So rosemary and sage over there in the kitchen herb garden right outside my kitchen door. Really fun to grow them where you can just dash outside and pick some for a meal. But all these herbs grow beautifully in containers. And here I've got some oregano growing in my 20-gallon smart pot right with the tomato plants. You can definitely interplant herbs with your vegetables. Now, oregano is a wonderful herb, and we like growing it here because we cook pizza, and I can just come and snip and grab some to pop on our pizza. And again, you can harvest it in the same way, hold it from the top, and just pull the leaves off by sliding backwards along the stem. It makes it very, very easy. Then you can also dehydrate or just dry them on a paper plate and crumple the leaves once they're completely dry, so you have herbs to eat all winter long. So for a container, you want to prepare the soil just by adding a good well-draining potting mix. All the Mediterranean herbs do like it kind of dry, so don't overwater. Now these just got watered with my drip irrigation, but typically you want to dump these out so they don't get too soggy. They'll grow much better in full sun in kind of medium moist soil. Now here's the thing about these herbs. You can cut them back completely to the stem. See how woody these stems are? So once they kind of start getting leggy and lanky, you can cut these back to where there's only just a few little sticks here and they look totally dead, and you'll be surprised they'll start leafing out and growing back. This oregano has probably been cut back maybe 3 or 4 times and it looks absolutely beautiful still. The next hardy or Mediterranean herb is thyme. Now all these herbs can take a ton of neglect, and I'm going to show you here a classic case of neglect. We've had 110-degree temperatures and my thyme here neglected to get watered, and it's still thriving and doing well. Has lots of green growth here in the middle. It's almost kind of dehydrated in the little pot here. So when it gets this dry, you could just crinkle the leaves right up here, and you could see how you could save this in a jar for recipes. But once I water this and even cut some of the dead growth back, it's going to pop right back and be growing me delicious thyme, which is great on recipes like chicken and fish for years and years. So definitely grow your small little container herb garden on your balcony. Now we don't often see the front of our house, but here we are out in our front yard garden, and here I've got another variety of rosemary growing. So this one actually blooms and have flowers. Now typically the bees are buzzing around here, but it's still early in the morning, and you can see here thyme will take the heat. But it's probably been 110, 120 out here in the front, and it's gotten a little bit fried. So it's great to plant rosemary in hot, dry areas. This is actually my favorite kind of rosemary. I like it better than the variety we have growing in the back because the leaves are very, very tender. The flowers are edible, and I can just harvest it and use it in my recipes. And you can see how quickly rosemary grows. You can actually use it as a landscape plant. So plant it along your fences, in your garden beds, and you can have rosemary for years and years and years. Now I also want to show you the lavender that's right next to the rosemary. Another very hardy herb. And look at these gorgeous flowers, and I can't tell you how amazing they smell out here. But lavender can be used in teas, in sachets. The bees absolutely love lavender. So if you want to attract bees to your garden, plant lavender and they will just come in droves, I promise you. Now the other thing about lavender is it's very, very heat tolerant. So the hottest part of this house is right here in the front. And once it blooms, I can cut it back. You can see all these blooms are kind of dying. You want to harvest it before it blooms for the best fragrance and the best flavor. But this plant has been cut back many, many times as well and just absolutely lasts for years. And even the dried blooms smell amazing. Now that we covered the drought-tolerant herbs, let's talk about some herbs who like a little more moisture. The first one being chives. Now, in my opinion, you can never have too many chives. It's definitely the herb that I use the most, and it grows like crazy. Now, again, everything's looking a little bit beat up from the heat here, but chives are so easy to grow from seed. The flowers are also edible. The aroma is amazing. They're very easy to harvest. You just snip, grab a handful, and clip. And typically I'll harvest these almost every single morning for use in our scrambled eggs, and they absolutely smell amazing. Now, all you have to do to grow chives, it's so easy. You just sprinkle seeds down here in a row and they will grow back year after year. Now, chives grow in clumps. So let me show you what I mean here. See all those? Those are clumps of chives, which you can pull up and spread out and regrow all over your garden or give some to friends. Now, chives can be cut back when they start looking like this. They're kind of flopping over because they're a little bit overgrown. They can be completely cut back to the very stem, and they will grow back year after year. They're extremely cold hardy. They'll take temperatures down to 20 degrees. So they can grow in most northern climates and definitely year round in southern climates. Typically, they're a little bit cooler loving of an herb, but they can definitely grow very, very well in hot temperatures, especially if you grow them in a partially shaded area like I have here in my raised bed. They also grow great in containers, so they're perfect for balcony gardens if you don't have a ton of space. I've been growing chives here, gosh, probably for about a year here in my Calicum 1-gallon Smart Pot, and it just grows beautifully almost no matter where I have it. But you do need to keep them well watered. So I have them here on my drip irrigation system. Right now in the summertime, it's set to water every other day for about 20 minutes. If you're growing them in containers, and this applies to any of the perennials we're growing today, they're going to need watered a lot more often. The Calicum Smart Pot is a great size for a small amount, but it does need watered almost daily in the hot weather. If you want to grow more, just grow in a bigger Smart Pot. You can grab these over on our website, as well as my herb seed collection, which has 6 or 7 different varieties of herbs in it. Now, the next moisture-loving herb I have right here down the hill, and that is chamomile. Let me take you down there and show it to you. The next moisture and really cool loving herb is chamomile. I love growing chamomile in my garden. The flowers are absolutely beautiful. Now, a lot of the flowers have died back now in the heat. We've got a few here just kind of hanging on in a little bit of a shaded area. So if you've grown chamomile, you know and love these beautiful, soft, delicate flowers, which are delicious in tea and also steeped for syrups on top of baked goods. They're absolutely beautiful edible garnish. And chamomile is very, very hardy down to 10 degrees. So I've had these growing in this spot for several years, have cut them way back because they do tend to kind of branch and leaf out here over the walkway, but they always come right back. So in northern climates, you want to prune off a lot of the dead growth before wintertime and even mulch heavily around the base, and they will come back year after year and delight you with those gorgeous, soft, white, delicate flowers. Little note about chamomile. It can be grown from seed, but the seeds are very, very tiny. These are from my herb garden seed collection. Can be a little bit challenging and slow to germinate. However, they can be easily divided and spread through division. So just like you would chives, you would dig up some of the stems from the roots and spread them out so you have lots of chamomile all over your garden or to share with friends. I want to bring you into my pollinator garden, where I also have some herbs. Here I have another variety of sage growing. Now, sorry I don't know the name of this variety, but it smells delicious. And I love just the kind of lighter green, almost bluish green color of these leaves. A little bit different from the one I showed you in the upper herb garden that has larger kind of palm-shaped leaves. But when these bloom, they're beautiful purple flowers, which attract the bees like crazy. And generally, I hack it back about twice a year. It grows right back and just grows more beautifully than ever. So pruning your herbs is a good strategy to use when they start to look kind of woody and leggy or buggy or anything. Prune back your perennial herbs for fresh new growth. Now here I've got some mint growing, and if you've ever grown mint, you know it is a very invasive herb. You really have to grow it in a container to contain it so it doesn't spread all over your garden. Now what happens with mint though, you have to really watch it. Harvest it before it flowers, because once it flowers, it will drop seeds, which I think it's done back there against the stone wall. And now I've got mint growing back there. It's really, really hard to pull out by the roots. It just spreads like crazy. So either grow it in a container. This is actually a galvanized steel pipe. When we put this garden in, we cut these pieces of pipe up, spray painted them, and now we've got some cute little planters in here, which are really pretty. So I have literally had the same mint plant growing in here, I want to say for about 12 years. So it does last for many, many years. This plant can be cut back literally to the sticks when you think it won't come back again, and it grows right back. I typically do that several times a year. But we love to come out here and just harvest mint for our beverages. It makes great mojitos. It makes great mint tea. It's great to steep in water if you're just kind of bored with the flavor of your water. It'll make you drink water more, I guarantee it. Or if you're really ambitious, you can make mint jelly, dehydrate it. There's so many uses for mint. So here in Southern California, it will grow year round. In colder climates, you can cut it back, maybe in the fall when it starts to not look so good, then mulch it heavily at the base of the plants. It's going to pop back right in the spring. You'll be surprised how hardy your mint is and how many, many years you'll be able to grow it. There's so many different varieties too. Chocolate mint, spearmint, peppermint, maybe even lemon mint. So let me know what varieties you're growing. Oh, and by the way, make sure you subscribe. Like I said, we have over 1,600 garden videos and a lot more detail on growing and planting all of the perennials I'm talking about here in this video. And by the way, if you don't have any mint, ask your friends if they have some, because it propagates very, very easily from cuttings. Pop the cutting in water, add a little bit of Vermistera tea if you want to, and it will grow roots within a couple of weeks, and you'll be popping it in soil in your garden and be growing mint in no time for an endless, endless supply. We're going to shift gears a little bit now and talk about perennial fruits, starting off with fruits that prefer cooler temperatures. Of course, one of my all-time favorites are strawberries. Strawberries produce best in temperatures under 85. So these actually aren't producing a lot right now because of the high temperatures we're having. But the good thing is that they've been shaded, so they've survived in our crazy temperatures. And because I've been fertilizing them regularly, I've got new flowers and new fruit starting to set. So my hope is that with cooler temperatures in the next couple of weeks, I'll be getting some brand new ripe strawberries. Now, the great thing about strawberries is they are also very, very cold hardy. Some varieties will even take cold down to 0 or 20 degrees. So in the wintertime, from the colder temperatures, they're going to start to die back. Here in California, the leaves actually change colors. So we do get just a bit of a season change with our strawberries. Then you can cut back your strawberry plants in the wintertime, cut them back, just leaving the crown, which is right here at the base of the plant, and a few small sticks, and then mulch them heavily. I've got them mulched here with shredded straw to protect the crowns during the freezing temperatures, and then they will survive over the wintertime and start leafing out once the spring hits. Now, I love growing strawberries in the crate towers. It works really well because you can grow a lot of strawberries in my container garden here. And these crates are lined with the Smart Pots crate liners. They work really, really well for that. The fabric is aerated, which really helps them stay cooler in the hot temperatures. And then all I do, folks, is so easy. You just cut little holes in the sides of the crate liners, put the strawberry plants in, and I think I have, I'm going to say maybe 20 or 30 plants growing here in the crate tower. I would never have room for that in my container garden if I wasn't growing them vertically. So definitely growing them vertically saves you a ton of space. Now, when you're growing in containers, they're going to need watered and fertilized more often. They really don't like to be super, super dry. So I've got them here on drip irrigation. I wound the drip irrigation hoses around each individual crate. And by the way, I have over 1,600 YouTube videos. So you can search strawberries and find a more detailed video on how I did this crate. But the drip is in each and every crate. And then it's on a separate system here in my container garden, so it gets watered more often than my raised beds. And right now in the summer heat, my container garden gets watered about 15 minutes a day. Sometimes even I have to come out and give them a little bit of supplemental water on those 110-degree days. But the key to strawberries and keeping the production going with strawberries is plant strawberries of different varieties. There's the June-bearing, ever-bearing, and day-neutral that will produce and harvest at different times of the year, so you can keep your harvest going throughout the spring and the early winter. Another great way I love to grow strawberries is in hanging baskets, and these are right outside my kitchen door, so I can just pop out here and grab a few berries to put on top of my morning yogurt. So I've got the hanging baskets here lined with the Smart Pots hanging basket liners. I love these. They're aerated. They're so much better than the Coca-Cola liners because those dry out and fall apart so quickly, and I've grown in these for years. So perfect to place maybe 3 or 4 strawberry plants here in this hanging basket. And the wonderful thing about strawberries too is you can propagate them so easily from runners. So let me show you what I'm doing here. When you're growing them for the fruit, you want to clip the runners off. The runner is a long stem. I've got scarlet runner beans in here too. Is a long stem that shoots off from the mother plant, which is growing here in the hanging basket. So growing for berries, clip the runner so more energy goes into berries. But if you want to create more plants, just let the runners run, so to speak, and they will actually root. You can put them in a cup of soil to root. These I'm just actually letting grow down into this garden bed right below me here, because I'd like to have some strawberries down in this area. So you can see all the runners that are coming down here. And if you let them do their thing, they will just naturally root here right in the soil, just like these are right here. So once they root, what you can actually do is disconnect them from the mother plant. You'll know when they're rooted when you get a little bit of resistance when you tug on the plant. So once that happens, you just disconnect the stem here, and you've got brand new strawberry plants. So strawberries are literally one of the easiest fruits to propagate. Plant them once in your garden and you can grow endless supply of strawberries for years and years and years and have delicious fruit to eat. Another berry that I love growing in my garden are blackberries. If you follow along with us, you know that we've actually transplanted these blackberries twice in order to expand the deck. So blackberries do tend to be a little more heat tolerant than strawberries, typically harvesting around late summer, I'd say mid to late summer to early fall. Now, I didn't get a ton of harvest from these this year. I think the sun conditions changed with the deck shading them out just a little bit, and maybe because I transplanted them twice, but hopefully next year we'll get a bigger harvest. Now, I already have harvested some off here. I want to show you what they look like here. This one is beautifully black and ready to harvest. You can harvest them when they pull very, very easily from the vine. Oh man, this one is looking really juicy. Oh, this is just absolutely perfect. The ones here that are red and not black are not quite ready. So we'll be keeping an eye on those, and probably in the next few weeks, they'll be ready to roll. Now, blackberries can grow for years and years and years. And in a lot of areas, they're considered invasive. Like the Pacific Northwest, people are chopping them out and taking them out. They can actually cover cars. But here in Southern California, I do prune them back in the wintertime to little tiny sticks. And again, search our channel for blackberries and you'll find exactly how to do that so you get lots of growth. Because what they do is they grow on second year canes. After they've grown the first year, this cane will turn brown, and then you can cut it back to the ground and leave these second year canes to grow a couple of feet. So you'll prune them back after they're done producing, after they're dormant, and that really is the key to having lots and lots of blackberries in the spring. Now I'm going to bring you over here and show you a different area in the garden where I have other berries growing. They do need a little bit of fertile soil, so I do feed them compost, organic fertilizer, Vermistera worm tea in the spring, and then they can pretty much be left just to do their thing. But can be grown in containers. Okay, this area is a big mess right now, guys. You're gonna have to excuse that. But they're actually growing back here in some Little Shorty smart pots, and you can grab Little Shorties over on my website. But you can see how they just really just take off and can take over if you don't prune them to manage the size. So just because you don't have a ton of space doesn't mean that you can't grow blackberries. So in warmer climates, they are going to benefit from a little bit of shade like we've got going over here in this Little Shorty. Again, tons of weeds back here, guys, but we're keeping it real. We got to grow our own food and show you all these perennials. Look at those gorgeous blackberries. I mean, they are just shiny and ripe for the picking. And one of our favorite ways to eat blackberries is either over vanilla ice cream or just pop them on yogurt with a little bit of granola on top, a drizzle of honey, and you are good to go. So another delicious berry to grow. A couple of other berries I don't have growing right now: raspberries, blueberries, all perennials that can be pruned back and then come back year after year. So definitely grow berries in your garden. And I just want to show you how vigorously blackberries grow. This is shooting off here from one plant. It's probably taller than I am, maybe 8 foot tall. So when you get these crazy long shoots, you do want to prune them because they're not going to grow berries this year. You can just prune them and cut them off to manage the size. Now here, these blackberries get a whole lot more sun than my other ones do, and they are growing a lot larger plants. However, it's too hot for them, and I'm hardly getting any berries off them. So hopefully next year we'll have better luck, and also a little bit cooler temperatures. They do like kind of that chill, winter chill, to produce the berries. Now there are many varieties of blackberries. These happen to be the thornless variety, which is really nice. If you plant berries with thorns, they're very sharp. So make sure you wear like long gloves when you get in here and do your pruning and harvesting. We have our cool season fruits, our strawberries and blackberries. Now let's talk warm season fruits. By strategically planting fruits that like different temperatures, you can spread your fruit harvest out and never be out of fruits to eat. So one of my favorites is passion fruit. What can I say about passion fruit? It is such a large, vigorously easy to grow plant. This actually came from a cutting from our live stream moderator, Misha. And you do need to watch our live streams on Monday at noon Pacific time. She sent it to me about 5 years ago as a small little cutting about this height or so. And look what it's grown into. So I just planted the cutting in the ground and it grew up and over this trellis. Now you do need to have a very, very strong, large trellis for a passion fruit. This is a very sturdy garden arch. You can also grow it on a cattle panel, say up against a fence, but it's a vigorous grower and needs continual pruning. So if you don't have a large space, passion fruit might not be the one for you. The flowers are absolutely beautiful. We don't have any flowers blooming right now because they turn into these gorgeous purple passion fruit, of which this vine is absolutely loaded down with. Now, you know when they're ready to harvest, when this particular variety is purple, is very easy to pull from the vine or just falls to the ground. It's pretty much how I harvest them, is just pick up the ones that fall and then take them into the house to let them ripen. They're a dark purple color when they're ripe and will get a little bit kind of wrinkled up when they are at the peak of flavor. So you can look in here under this vine and just see tons and tons of passion fruit. We literally have about 20 in the house that we're waiting to ripen up and eat. And Jerry, do you have your knife on you? I got to cut one of these open and just show you all what they look like. They're actually a very tart kind of fruit. I like to eat them on top of yogurt or on top of ice cream. And the seeds are edible. They kind of have a gel type of consistency on the inside, but they're absolutely delicious fruit. And typically, look how juicy they are. You can strain them for juice for your beverages or your cocktails. And typically, I will just scoop them out and eat them right out of the shell. I think I'm going to have a little drink of juice here.
This is unrehearsed, by the way.
Wow, this is so good. We got to go ahead and have some of these for breakfast afterwards. Just absolutely delicious. So typically passion fruit grow best from cuttings. So if you have a friend with a passion fruit vine, you definitely want to get a cutting. They take a little bit of time to root, a couple of weeks. You kind of have to babysit it and make sure the soil doesn't dry out too much. They do best in warm climates. So in Southern California, they're perfect. You can grow them in cooler climates, but you might not get much fruit. So I would pretty much stick to the warm climates for this one. And while we're here, we can't forget the dahlias, one of my all-time favorite flowers of all time. Did I say that yet? I love dahlias. So many different varieties. And did you know they're edible and a perennial? So you really can't go wrong with them. You can actually take off the petals and eat them like on a salad. And actually this stem just broke, so I'm going to cut this dahlia flower off so you can get a better view of it. Dahlias are actually grown, you can grow them from seed, but it can be a little bit challenging. I prefer to grow them from tubers. And the tubers you can actually peel and boil and eat as well. So what you do in the spring is you put the tubers in the ground, or if you're growing in a southern climate, you can leave your tubers in the ground from the previous year. In climates where you get hard freezes, you want to dig those tubers up and store them in your garage in between newspapers. So basically, you can just peel the flowers off, pop them on salads, or just eat them plain. But I've got to show you a few of my favorite dahlia varieties. And if you're a dahlia lover, you know that you just can't resist the big dinner plates. Let me show you. Now, the fun thing about growing dahlias is they come in so many different colors and shapes and varieties. We've got this one here, and I'm sorry I don't remember the name. And then this one here, which is kind of a pale yellow with a pink center. Now, these are kind of a medium size. There's also smaller varieties of dahlias called pom-poms. But I've got to show you the dinner plates, which are really my favorite variety. I've tried to create kind of a dahlia walkway here on the hill. And these white ones here are absolutely massive, and they do take the heat, so they're definitely drying out a little bit with the crazy heat we've had, but they're absolutely gorgeous flowers. I highly recommend dahlias. A bit more of an investment if you buy them from tubers, but they will last for years and years, and you can try and grow them from seed, but it can be challenging. So plant dahlias once, you'll never have to replant them again. And with dahlias, the more sun they get, the more they're going to bloom. Let me show you some over here that I did a little experiment and planted them in a shady area just because I had this open spot here, and you can see how they're just not doing near as well. Not near as many blooms. They just don't look strong and vibrant like the dahlias in the sunny spot will do, are growing. But the good thing is, because they're grown from tubers in the ground, what I'll do is I'll cut these completely off and I'll dig the tubers up and then move them around to a different spot in my garden for better growth next year. So it's always good to kind of experiment with different spaces in your garden, see what grows best, and then make the adjustments as you grow. Another edible flower is salvia. Now, salvia flowers you can pop off and put on garnishes or eat on salads. But the biggest reason I grow salvia is for the bees. Now, some of these flowers are dying back, but typically this plant is absolutely buzzing with bees. So it is a huge pollinator attractant to your garden. Now, I am always amazed at salvia because once it starts looking kind of woody and there's a lot of dead branches underneath, typically in the late fall or early winter here in Southern California, I will cut this plant completely off. And you'll be amazed. I'm always amazed at how it springs back into life and starts growing these leaves and flowers again as soon as the weather gets warm. Now, it does like to grow in full sun. So in the wintertime, it doesn't grow quite as quickly here because I have mostly shade on the hill in my garden. But the leaves are also edible too. So salvia is definitely a must-grow perennial flower in your garden. It will keep on blooming year after year, save you a ton of money. You won't have to plant all those annual flowers because you'll have so much salvia growing. It does come in several different colors. I have the purple variety here. Over in this garden bed, I've got the white variety, which isn't near as much of a bee attractant, but it's also a very attractive variety to grow. Now let's talk warm season fruit like figs. Now, if you caught my recent fig tree video, you saw how I'm espaliering my fig tree, which is basically a method of growing the branches horizontally across these wires, shaping the tree as it grows, mainly to manage the size. I would never have space for a fig tree in my garden. They can get to be about 20 feet tall. So if you're going to grow a fig tree traditionally, you want to have a lot of space where it's not going to shade out the rest of your garden. If you've got a small space, grow it like this and check out the video for all the how-tos. Figs are actually very cold hardy, down to about 10 degrees, and also very heat tolerant, surviving just fine in our hot Southern California summers. And typically the harvest is late summer to early fall. You'll know when they're ready when the figs, first of all, change color from green to a brown color, or kind of a purplish color, depending on the variety of figs that you're growing. And the fruit will be very, very soft and squeezable to the touch. We actually harvested some when we were out at Gary's house in Maryland in August. They were very delicious. We ate them fresh off the tree, and then he made some fig jelly out of them, which is an absolutely delicious way to eat them. Now, in cold climates, you are going to want to mulch the bottom of your fig tree pretty heavily with some shredded leaves or shredded straw so it survives over the wintertime. Or you can grow it in a container and then just move your container into a sheltered location so it survives those winters, especially if you go down below 10 degrees. But in southern climates, you should be fine. You won't have to do any extra care during the wintertime. This one was also given to me by a viewer, Patricia, as a teeny tiny cutting a couple of years ago. And now we're going to have figs to harvest, and it will grow for many, many years and give us delicious food. Another type of fruit that are perennials are citrus fruits. And here I've got some lemons. You can grow lemons in a container. These are growing in a 30-gallon Smart Pot, so you will need a larger size container to grow your citrus fruits. I would recommend choosing a dwarf variety if you're going to grow them in containers. They'll just do much better that way and won't outgrow your containers. Now, Smart Pots does have containers on up to 1,000 gallons. So if you want to grow a large citrus tree, by all means, knock yourself out. Head over to smartpots.com. You can grab yourself whatever size your heart desires. I like these because they have the handles, so I can pull them around if I need to. If I want to move them, I would definitely put them on casters so I could easily roll them back and forth. So lemons really do best in a warm climate like we have here in Southern California. If you are going to grow them in a colder climate, definitely get those casters in containers. That way you can roll them into your garage, or actually you want to put them in a sunny windowsill where they're still getting sun in the wintertime so they will survive. So lemons typically in warmer climates, you can harvest them, if you're lucky, year round. Here we've got some lemons that are coming on, still green. but they're doing very well in this spot. They definitely need an area with full sun. These trees are absolutely loaded down. Now, I don't do a ton of pruning with my lemon trees. I'm not an expert pruner, but typically what I'll do is I'll come in and prune out these lower branches. You can see these here need pruned to direct, not only to manage the shape and the size, but to direct the plant's energy into producing lemons here at the top of the tree where they're getting more sunlight. So this tree, I want to say, is maybe 8 to 10 foot tall. So definitely research the varieties that you want to grow to make sure that it's appropriate to fit the space that you have. Limes are also a great citrus to grow, as well as grapefruit if you've got the space. Now come on down below and I'll show you where I have a little orange tree growing. If you have a large property and lots of room for trees without shading off out your garden, you can grow the citrus in the ground or in raised beds. But since I don't have that, I typically grow my citrus in containers. And here we've got an orange tree at the back of the chill zone. It is growing in a pot that's probably, I'm going to say 30 or 40 gallons. And typically oranges are ready to harvest in the late fall or early winter here in Southern California. So this tree isn't producing right now, but soon it will start to have flowers on it. And typically citrus don't like to have what's called wet feet. So you want to make sure that the soil is moist but not soggy. Now here it is really dried out, so this is definitely not ideal soil. I better check and make sure this drip is working. If it dries out, typically you're going to see wilted leaves, which I'm kind of seeing a little bit of curling right here, which alerted me to the fact that my drip might not be working. So definitely keep it moist but not waterlogged for the best growth for your citrus. Now orange trees do prefer full sun, and we've had a lot of growth from these trees here which are shading it out. So what I'm going to do in the next few weeks is move this container and pull it forward for more sun exposure. That way I get more fruit in the fall and winter. But especially in containers, in the springtime, you want to put some good organic granular fertilizer and compost and the worm castings and mix it into the top of your soil. And then I'd say probably once a month or so, especially for your containers, feed it a good water-soluble fertilizer. The Vermistera worm tea is great for citrus plants because it gives them a nice, slow, steady growth. Early in the season, you can feed them nitrogen, but then back off on the nitrogen and stick with the worm tea throughout the season. And as long as you're growing them in favorable conditions, you'll have lots of delicious citrus fruit to eat. And they'll be highly, highly productive, give you lots of delicious food for years to come. Now let's talk about some vegetables that are perennial. Such a joy to grow these because they keep on coming back year after year. Some of my favorites to grow are the leafy greens, such as chard. Chard is an amazing vegetable. You can grow it in so many different colors. This is the red chard. There's also rainbow chard, pink chard, peppermint chard, all kinds of different chards. And it's such a delicious vegetable. So, so healthy for you. So typically you want to harvest the leaves at the baby stage for the best flavor. But when they get to be this large, you can actually use them in wraps and then harvest the stems and chop them up for stir fries, similarly to how you would do celery. Now chard does very well overwintering, especially in the mild winter climates, but it's also very cold hardy if you get hard freezes in the wintertime, but also very heat tolerant, so you really can't go wrong with it. What you want to do, the key to keeping your chard fresh and keep it on growing, is once the stems, or once the leaves, maybe, look at this one, has a lot of bug holes in it, or maybe it just starts to bolt and flower, or they just start looking kind of ratty-tatty from the weather, is you can actually cut your chard off at the base of the plant. So you want to leave maybe an inch or two of the base of the plant in, chop it completely off. And then the amazing thing about chard is that it will regrow in the warmer temperatures. It'll take a couple of weeks to start showing brand new green leafy growth. And you'll have fresh new chard, little baby leaves to take the place of these old tired ones. Now in colder climates, what you can do is you can heavily mulch the base of your chard plants here to help protect the roots, and also construct either cold frames or heavy-duty plastic covers over your garden beds to help protect your chard in the freezing temperatures. Let me show you another variety of chard I have growing in here, and this one is not looking so good. So this is a perfect example. This is actually a pink chard. You can see the stalks here are more of a pinkish color, gotten pretty beat up from the heat. So in this case here, I would do exactly what I was just telling you about. See how the stem is kind of starting to thicken here? That's bolting. So I'll just cut this off at the base and this chard will grow right back, which I've already done a couple of times this season. And by the way, look at the stem of this, Jared, if you want to come down a little bit closer one more time. It almost looks like a peppermint stick. So I think this might even be that peppermint chard. It doesn't taste like peppermint, but just the stalk is kind of that peppermint stick color, which is always kind of fun. So just look for different varieties that you really enjoy growing. Now another perennial green are mustard greens, and they're right next door here in this 15-gallon Smart Pot. And by the way, all of these grow perfectly in containers, in raised beds, or in in-ground gardens. So whatever space you have, just make the adjustment and pick the container that works for you. Now, these are mustard greens, and these are getting chowed down by some animals here, maybe the bunnies that have been hopping around. But again, very, very hardy greens, will be perennial, especially in those warmer climates, but just a delicious, really, really tasty green. And these can all be harvested either as baby leaves like this for really good flavor, or let them grow larger and use them for your smoothies and your wraps, or even juice them for fresh, delicious juices, and they'll grow for years. And by the way, for more on how to easily grow your garden, grab my new book, The 10-Minute Gardener. It actually releases on Christmas Eve, but you can pre-order it now over on our website. Get a couple of free bonuses when you pre-order. So thanks a lot. Now I want to show you another leafy green that can be grown as a perennial, especially in southern climates, and that is kale. Now, kale is another one of those leafy greens that can really take a beating. This one's actually growing over and out of one of my red galvanized steel planters, and I've actually been stepping on it quite a bit as I walk through this garden bed, so it can really take a beating and keep on growing. Now, this is either red Russian kale. I know we've got some KX kale in here from the Specialty Green Seed Collection, and it's just a power-packed nutrient green. And I know you're going to love growing it in your garden. You can do the same thing to it that you can with chard and mustard green. Chop it off at the base. It will grow back, mulch heavily in northern climates, or cover for winter protection. The great thing about all these leafy greens is that they can be grown very, very easily from seed, either direct sown right in your garden beds, or you can start them from seed indoors. And one of the last ones I'm going to share with you today, as far as the leafy green perennials, are sorrel. Now, this is an especially beautiful variety. It's called red vein sorrel, and I've cut this back several times. It can take up a pretty good amount of space, so you want to give it a little bit of elbow room, maybe 2 to 3 feet of space here in my raised bed, but you can keep it pruned to manage the size. Now, the wonderful thing about red vein sorrel is it's red. It's so beautiful. In fact, you kind of have to be careful when you're picking it not to get the red juice on your clothing or it will stain. But it's delicious, especially when you harvest it at this young stage. It's really fun to have lots of colors and textures and flavors in your garden fresh salads. So again, grows easily from seed. The seeds are very, very tiny, but just sprinkle them in your garden bed, cut it back, and you'll be growing sorrel literally for years. I think this one has been growing in here about 2 to 3 years, and I probably cut it back about 2 times a year. Now, if you just want to manage the size, what you can do is instead of cutting back the entire plant, you can just kind of cut the lower leaves here. You can see how I've trimmed the lower leaves so it doesn't branch out too far here over my pepper plants. And by the way, when you harvest any of these, what I do is I just pick the outer leaves from the plant and then leave the inner leaves to keep on growing. And that way you can harvest with a cut and come again method and keep spreading out your harvest throughout the season. A few warm season vegetables that can actually be grown as perennials are peppers and eggplant. Now you might be thinking, wait a second. They're warm season vegetables. Aren't they damaged by frost? And yes, they are. However, with special care, they can be grown as perennials. Here I've got a jalapeno pepper, which I think this is its 3rd year in the garden, and it's absolutely loaded down with jalapenos. In fact, I need to make like some bacon wrapped cheese stuffed jalapenos or something delicious like that. But they do need special care in order to overwinter. So when this jalapeno plant is done producing for the season, and this can be done in northern gardens as well as southern gardens, what you want to do to keep it alive over the winter time is prune it back. Very important. Take all the excess growth off the top and prune it back to where it just has a couple of Y branches coming off here from the main stem. Then in northern climates, what you can do is dig it up, put it in a container, move it into your garage or into a sheltered location, and then bring it back out again in the spring. Keep it lightly moist over the winter time, just enough to keep it alive. We do want to keep it in a dormant state over the winter time, and then once the temperatures warm up in the springtime, you can plant it outside in your garden, and you're starting with a plant instead of starting from seed, which is going to give you a harvest that much sooner. Southern climates, no frost, just cut it back, mulch heavily, and you'll see new growth when the spring appears. But this way you can keep growing your pepper plants year after year from the same plant and really grow them as a perennial. I have some eggplant growing over here in the fountain planter. Now it's been a really crazy year for my eggplant. It's just now starting to flower and fruit due to the crazy temperatures, but it can be overwintered in the same way as peppers. Cut it off at the base, remove the excess growth. When temperatures warm up, you're going to see brand new growth. Make sure to mulch heavily or move into a sheltered location for you northern gardeners. Other perennial vegetables you can grow in your garden are asparagus, artichokes, rhubarb, horseradish. The sky's the limit when it comes to perennials. And let me know which one of these you're going to plant so you can save time, money, effort, and have lots of food growing in your garden for years to come. Thanks for watching. See you next time in the garden.